Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. Well, it's a beautiful spring day here in Bowral, which really sunny. So that, of course, means that people are out mowing their lawns, but no one too close. So I don't think you'll be able to overhear that. I've had the lovely gentleman from Windsor Shire in my chook pen this morning, dealing with the sewage, but luckily that stopped because I was making very interesting gurgling noises in the house. So I'm able to start recording this podcast here today. So in my world, what's happening? Obviously, my new book, Nanny Piggins and the Origin Story, has launched. It's out there in paperback, audiobook, and ebook form. You may have noticed if you were trying to listen to this podcast last week's episode on Spotify, if that's the platform you use, there were some problems. Spotify keeps taking down episodes of this podcast if they think that I'm plagiarizing from someone's book, which of course I am, but it's my own book, so it's okay. So they, like last week's episode, Spotify took it down because I was reading a chapter from Nanny Piggins and the Origin Story. So I had to write to them and say, it's okay, I wrote Nanny Piggins and the Origin Story, so I'm totally allowed to record it. And they're good, like they put it back up, but it just means that there's like 24 or 48 hours where people on Spotify can't get it, which is frustrating. So please, if you're ever trying to listen to any of the episodes that are chapters from one of my books, just be patient. Or like if you think I haven't realized like it's been down for more than 24 hours, then please just send me a DM and let me know. So I will. It doesn't take too long to get it back up there, only a day or two. It's funny because they've just sort of like randomly picked half a dozen chapters. It must be where, because they like read their AI bots or their algorithms or whatever it is, the technical stuff. They can obviously read what I'm saying. And so if I say, oh, I'm going to read a chapter of a book, having just said that out loud, it will probably mean that this episode gets it's highlighted too. But if I say something like that, then the episode gets pulled off. Whereas they have not noticed that I've recorded all 5 of the Pesky Kids books. Like no one's noticed that. No one's pulled any of those down. So, yeah, it's all very strange the way these artificial intelligence things work. Anyway, so that's what's been going on in my world. These funny little things. All right. Well, at the book launch last week for Nanny Piggins and the Origin Story, I met lots of lovely fans, and that was awesome. And people had, they've always got requests of what they want me to put in the books, and some of them are easier to meet than others. But one girl, she'd actually written to me and asked me to do a story about the Loch Ness Monster, because if you have read all 9 of the Nanny Piggins books, you will know that there is actually a reference to the Loch Ness Monster in one of those books. And she's like, oh, you should do a story about the Loch Ness Monster. She wrote to me months ago. And I probably said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then the combination of I forgot or I couldn't figure out how to make the story work. So I didn't do that. And so she actually came to the book launch, this girl, and she was, a lovely girl. And I felt so bad about not having done it. And I usually try and be very careful about not promising things because my short-term memory is terrible. So if I promise to put a kid's name in a book or something, the chances of me actually following through and doing it are pretty slim. And it's partly because so many kids asked me to do it, but it's partly also just my memory is terrible. Anyway, I felt terrible about not doing the Loch Ness Monster thing. So it was on my mind, and I wasn't planning to do it. But then I thought, oh, yeah, I had a couple of ideas about how I could do a Loch Ness Monster episode. So I sat down and I talked it through with my kids, and I came up with some good ideas. And I thought, okay, yeah, I will give it a go. So I did write for this week a story about the Loch Ness Monster. So let's just get into it. Anything else I need to say? No, I've talked repeatedly about my new book. It's propaganda to try and get you all to go out and get it. There's obviously the shows coming up. If you're in Perth, the book launch, the official big book launch is on the 2nd of November. So you can get tickets at ticketswa.com. And the Christmas shows are coming up in Brisbane, Sydney and Canberra. So you can go to my website, rasprat.com, and click on the live shows banner, and you can get tickets there. All right, let's get into today's episode. All right, I'll bring up the script. Okay, here we go. The truth about the Loch Ness Monster, according to Nanny Piggins. It's all right, Boris, said Nanny Piggins. The scary lunatics have gone home now. I don't want to come out yet, whimpered Boris. I'll just stay under here for a few more days, to be sure. Boris was hiding under a rhododendron bush in the Greens' backyard. He wasn't tremendously well hidden because he was 10 feet tall and weighed 700 kilograms, so his hind legs and most of his bottom were sticking out the back of the bush. But he had already been under there for 3 hours, so Nanny Piggins was trying to coax him out with a slice of toast covered in honey. But, darling, you have to come out, said Nanny Piggins. I've made your favourite for dinner, a 10-litre bucket of honey with a packet of honey biscuits floating on top. You don't want to miss that. Oh, that does sound good, conceded Boris. No one makes a honey biscuit on honey float the way you do. No one else makes it, said Derek. I know, said Boris. The restaurant industry never caters to bears. Then they're surprised when bears try to eat people instead. If bears could go into nice cafes and have brunch with their families, they wouldn't be so grumpy when hikers come across them in the woods. Come on, Boris, said Samantha. Nanny Piggins scared off the people who scared you. It's safe to come out now. Are you sure? Asked Boris. She chased them down the street with her egg beater, said Michael, telling them they should be ashamed of themselves for scaring a sensitive, artistic young bear. And then she reported them to the RSPCB, said Derek. What's that? Asked Boris. The Royal Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Bears, explained Samantha. I didn't know such an organisation existed, said Boris. It didn't, said Michael. Nanny Piggins rang the king himself and demanded that he create one immediately so she could report the people who were pestering you. You're such a good sister, Sarah, said Boris. I don't deserve you. He broke down sobbing again here. Now, Boris, you must come out from under the bush immediately, said Nanny Piggins. I'm becoming seriously concerned about you. I think your blood honey levels have dipped far too low and is causing you to think irrationally. Of course you should have an international regulatory organisation created specifically for you and those bears in similar predicaments. It's the least the royal family can do. As far as I can see, apart from wearing silly hats and jewellery even I would find a tad over the top, they don't have anything else to do, so the royal family like it when someone gives them something to keep their days busy. But why were those people chasing me in the first place? Asked Boris. Were they Welsh guards who wanted to make me into a bearskin hat? If they were cold, I could have just sat on their heads. They don't need to skin me and turn me into a hat. They only needed to ask. No, the Welsh guards know better than to show their faces around here, said Nanny Piggins. No, the people in the street, they were Yeti hunters. What? Asked Boris. Yeti hunters, said Nanny Piggins. What's a Yeti hunter? Asked Michael. It's a person who believes that there's a species of very hairy human creature living in the wild who has remained hidden from civilization since Neanderthal times. That sounds crazy, said Michael. Yes, but there have been alleged sightings and some very blurry photographs taken that people claim as evidence, but no definitive proof. But the myth continues. Many cultures have a variation on the idea of a Yeti, a Bigfoot, or the abominable snowman. But why did those people chase me? Asked Boris. Well, you are tall and you walk upright and you are hairy, Samantha pointed out. But clearly Boris is not a man, said Nanny Piggins. He moves much more gracefully than any human. Just seeing you glide down the street is clear you're an entirely different species. But when people want to believe something, they can convince themselves of anything. It's just like all that trouble with my dear cousin Gillian McPiggins. Was she a Yeti? Asked Samantha. No, not at all, laughed Nanny Piggins. What a ridiculous idea. No, cousin Gillian was the Loch Ness Monster. What? Exclaimed Derek. You're gonna have to tell us the whole story, said Michael. I thought the Loch Ness Monster wasn't real, said Samantha. Ha! Said Nanny Piggins. Cousin Gillian is very real, let me assure you. It all started when she was a little girl. Like so many of us in the Piggins family, she was cursed. With extreme beauty, asked Michael. Why, yes, said Nanny Piggins. It must have been a burden, sympathised Derek. Indeed, said Nanny Piggins. Luckily, in Scotland, it's very cold for much of the year, so it's possible to wear lots of clothes to disguise her extreme beauty as much as possible. In fact, it was a member of the Piggins family, long ago in Scottish history, who invented the kilt, specifically to deal with this extreme beauty problem. Huh? Said Michael. You see, she reasoned that if you wore a spectacularly brightly coloured skirt and sash, and perhaps an eccentric hat with a bobble on it and a big cable-knit sweater, people would be less likely to notice how fabulously beautiful you were. And it worked. The fashion took off in Scotland. Everyone in Scotland started wearing tartan and kilts. But the problem for Gillian McPiggins was, when summer came around and she had to take off her cable-knit sweaters and tartan scarves and floppy berets, people would again notice her breathtaking attractiveness. Then men would be forever throwing themselves at her, begging her to marry them. The poor thing, said Boris. I hope she found a nice rhododendron bush to hide in. No, but she did do something similar, said Nanny Piggins. She decided that what she needed to do was to take up a hobby where she could go largely unseen for 3 months of the year. Hibernation? Asked Boris. No, it was summer, remember, said Nanny Piggins. Hibernation is fine in winter, but in summer, when it's warm, you really want to be outdoors, enjoying nature. So Cousin Gillian decided to take up scuba diving. Scuba diving, said Derek. Yes, you know, oxygen tanks and flippers, wetsuits, the whole bit, said Nanny Piggins. It was perfect. Once she had the whole kit on, you couldn't tell she was staggeringly beautiful. You could barely tell that she was a pig. But there was a problem. Gillian couldn't go swimming in the sea. Why? Asked Samantha. She was a pig, said Nanny Piggins. I don't understand, said Samantha. My dear, when you taste of bacon, you do not want to go swimming with sharks, said Nanny Piggins. She thought it better to go swimming in fresh water, inland, away from anything that might find her delicious. So she found a nice lake, or loch as they call them in Scotland, a great big one called Loch Ness. It was wonderful, served her purposes beautifully. She could swim all day. Admittedly, the water was cloudy, so there was not a lot to look at under the water, but she met some lovely eels and fish, and as she swam up and down the loch, she used the time creatively. In what way? Asked Derek. Did she invent a new swimming style or some new scuba technology? Oh, goodness no, said Nanny Piggins. She was a McPiggins. She had a higher calling. She spent her time underwater coming up with new recipes for Scottish shortbread. That must have taken a lot of concentration, said Boris. Indeed, agreed Nanny Piggins. Of all the research scientists on Earth, the makers of shortbread come closest to defying the laws of physics. Is making shortbread a science? Asked Derek. Derek Green, what are you saying? Of course it is, said Nanny Piggins. Oh, I don't mean to denigrate the importance of shortbread, spluttered Derek. Obviously, you have taught us all the extreme importance of all cake and baked goods to the evolution of society and the betterment of the planet. I just meant to say, I would have thought that making shortbread was more of an art. Ah, I see your mistake, said Nanny Piggins. The human mind does find it hard to wrap itself around the larger philosophical issues. What you need to try and grasp is that the making of shortbread is both an art and a science, and in Scotland sometimes even a religion. But we don't want to talk about theology, it's so controversial. Suffice it to say that the creation of shortbread is a science, and the scientists working on it, countless generations of Scottish women, have pushed the field of research to the extremes of human endeavour. Scottish women are able to put so much butter and sugar into one standard-sized biscuit, it borders on breaking the laws of physics, and we all know what happens when you break the laws of physics. A black hole opens up, then the entire surface of the planet is sucked into a tear in the space-time continuum, the children shouted. Exactly, said Nanny Piggins, which is why NASA asked me to stop making my vanilla fudge. Sure, it tastes good, but on balance, it wasn't worth destroying the whole planet for. But you can still make chocolate fudge, though, right? Asked Michael. Oh, yes, of course, said Nanny Piggins, so long as I show restraint and only pour in 1 or 2 cubic metres of sugar. Anyway, where was I? So Gillian McPiggins settled into the happy routine every summer of spending 3 months swimming up and down in the depths of Loch Ness, thinking about shortbread all day. In the evening, as the sun set, which it does very late in the day in Scotland in summer, she would clamber out of the loch, tired and happy, then spend the night in her little cottage by the loch, trying out her shortbread ideas. Everything went swimmingly for several years, until 1933, said Nanny Piggins. The rise of Hitler in Germany, said Derek. What? Said Nanny Piggins. No! In 1933, a surgeon from London went on holiday to Scotland, and being a rich doctor from the big city, he had the latest new-fangled gadget, a portable camera. He was sitting by Loch Ness late in the evening, no doubt thinking about all the delicious shortbread he'd eaten in Scotland, and how he was a fool to live in London so far away from all this shortbread, when he saw something moving in the loch. Now, you have to appreciate how unusual this was. This was Scotland. They don't have crocodiles or alligators or hippopotamuses or elephants. They only have sheep and cows on the land and fish and eels in the water, and that's it. Maybe a few deer or a rabbit. But it's all stuff that's been thoroughly documented in Beatrix Potter books. So when this surgeon saw a large shape rise up in the water, he reached for his camera and he took a photo. He actually took 4 photos, but being a surgeon, so he can presume pompous and used to making nurses do all the real work for him, he stuffed up the photography. 2 of the photos didn't work at all, and 2 of them were very blurry. He rushed the photos to a newspaper called the Inverness Courier, and they published them claiming that a massive monster had been sighted in Loch Ness. Poor Gillian, said Samantha. I know, said Nanny Piggins. She was only 4 foot tall and only weighed 30 kilograms. It was brutally unfair characterisation. With all that swimming all summer, she was in fact very athletic. Sure, she did eat 3 times her body weight in shortbread every night, but if you're going to spend all your day at the bottom of a Scottish lake, you need to keep warm. Anyway, the photograph was published in April, which was after summer had finished, so Gillian had donned her tartans and her cable net sweaters again and left the water for the cold months. But as soon as the paper was out, monster spotters descended on the loch. Tourists came from all across the country and all across Britain, hoping to see the monster for themselves. Thousands of them came with binoculars and stared out at the lake, and my cousin Gillian McPiggins sat out the front of her lochside cottage, eating her shortbread and watching them, and laughing just a little bit. But of course tourists get hungry, and shortbread smells delicious, so it was not long before one of the tourists noticed her, and he was so hungry he didn't notice that Gillian was staggeringly beautiful. He only noticed the beauty of her snack. I say, is that genuine Scottish shortbread? Asked the tourist. Aye, it is indeed, said Gillian, taking a bite. I've heard that shortbread in Scotland is better than shortbread anywhere else, said the tourist. It is, said Gillian, between chomps. We make it with a secret ingredient. Love? Asked the tourist. No, with rage, said Gillian. You have to understand the Scottish have a lot of rage, specifically with the English. They do? Asked Michael. Oh, yes, they do, said Nanny Piggins, and there are some crackingly good stories about it. I can tell you another day, but let's get back to this story. Would you mind selling me some of your shortbread? Asked the tourist. Now, scuba diving was not very sophisticated back then, said Nanny Piggins. Gillian had had to invent much of the equipment herself, the wetsuit, the compressed oxygen cylinders, the technology required to eat shortbread underwater without it getting wet. Hang about, said Derek. There's no way of eating shortbread underwater without it getting wet. Ha! No way that a human knows about, scoffed Nanny Piggins. Anyway, my point is, inventing all this equipment as well as pushing the boundaries of shortbread-related science was not an inexpensive pastime. So Gillian decided she would sell the tourists some of her shortbread. All right, said Gillian, and she sold him 1 square of her delicious shortbread, and that sealed her fate. The shortbread was so good, she was an instant success. Tourists flocked to Loch Ness to see the monster, they got hungry looking for it, and then they wanted something to eat, so they would go to Gillian McPiggins' tea shop. Every day, hundreds of tourists would sit at her tables outside her cottage. She even provided binoculars at every table so they could stare out at the loch, not realising that the actual monster was the staggeringly beautiful pig serving them tea and shortbread. And so that is how my cousin Gillian McPiggins inadvertently became the Loch Ness Monster and made a fortune selling shortbread. So the Loch Ness Monster is real, said Derek. Oh, yes, said Nanny Piggins. Cousin Gillian is over 100 years old now, but she still takes the occasional dip every summer. Boris had been so enthralled by the story that without realising what he was doing, he had crawled out and sat next to Nanny Piggins and eaten the slice of toast she'd had in her hand. And people chase Boris because they don't realise that the Yeti isn't real, said Samantha. Oh, no, said Nanny Piggins, the Yeti is real too. There really is a hairy man-beast roaming the wilds? Asked Derek. Oh, of course not, said Nanny Piggins. That whole notion is ridiculous. I thought so, said Derek. It's not a man, said Nanny Piggins. It's a woman and a pig. My dear cousin Agnetha. Your cousin is Bigfoot? Asked Michael. Yes, although her feet are normal-sized, said Nanny Piggins. I don't know how she got that name. Then why do people think she's a Yeti? Asked Samantha. Oh, because she always wears a full-length fur coat, said Nanny Piggins. You see, back in the 80s, animal rights activists got very angry about people wearing fur, and they'd throw paint at them, which was terribly unfair because they never gave Agnetha a chance to explain that all the furs that went into making her coat came from minks who had died naturally of old age and bequeathed their skins to her in their wills. They were all dear friends of hers. But animal rights activists always throw paint first and ask questions later. So Agnetha decided to go and live in the depths of the woods so she could be warm and fabulous in peace. But that's a story for another day. The end. Time for bed. Weren't we about to have dinner? Asked Michael. Oh, yes, said Nanny Piggins. Time for a bucket of honey. And that is the end of the story. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. That's it for now. I've got no idea what I'm doing next week. I'm off. Next week, I'm going to be in Canberra visiting some kids from the Aurora College. So I'm going to have to record an episode before I go. I've got a few ideas. So anyway, there's a lot coming up. And then next week, I'm also off to Perth for the book launch. So it's busy, busy, busy. Anyway, I hope you enjoy that story. That's it for now. Until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.